part 2, talking about the tune Conception. We're going to talk about how we can make walking lines and soloing ideas for this tune. It's a continuation of part 1 from last week. If you haven't checked that out, I recommend that you do. Welcome to Learn Jazz Bass with Matt Rybicki. I'm glad that you're here. Thanks for coming back for part 2, talking about Conception. So last time we talked about the history of the tune, we talked about the melody in detail, we talked about the harmony and options therein. And all that stuff is going to inform what we do here as far as what we can make when we improvise on the tune. The first thing is to talk about walking, and there is not terribly much to say about it, partially because of the difficulty of the tune. What I mean is, when we're playing it, and it's usually played up-tempo, by the way, the later George Shearing version from like the 80s or 90s, they do it really slow, which sounds really cool, but it's usually played quite fast. And so there's a lot of chords, and our role as walking, bass players is to like try to define the harmony. There's so much happening, we just gotta kind of hold on. So it makes a lot of sense to grab onto simple choices to be able to navigate this tune. And in fact, that's what George Duvivier with Bud Powell does. That's what Reggie Workman does on his one chorus that I've included in the PDFs here. So they're making it simpler by, for example, playing a lot of roots. Just playing roots, especially on those lot of movement or those chromatic descending dominant chords, just play roots there. They both do that. When there is 2 chords per bar, essentially you're playing a lot of roots. Basically, you just have to hang on any way that you can get your way through it, like reducing the harmony like we talked about last time. When there's a 2-5, take the 2 away. With some of those descending dominant chords in bars 6, 7, 8, try to eliminate some of those as part of your walking thing if you want. That may simplify things for you. And going back to that, the way we were looking at the harmony last time will help you with that. So check out that last video and the PDF from that. The other option, of course, the ideal thing would be to spend time really digging into how can I navigate these chords in a more interesting way or a way that I feel more secure about. When you spend time, go 1 bar at a time, 1 chord at a time, 2 chords at a time, trying to connect them. When you find something that you like, as I've always said, write it down. Write it down into a notebook that's specifically for lines that you make up, because you want to own that, you want to take ownership of that. There are a couple ways that you can have patterns that make sense through those moving chords. For example, if you have the B flat 7 to A7, A flat, G7, you can play a certain pattern that will help you to stay locked in, but also give a little bit of harmony. For example, what I'm saying is play root 5th, root 5th, root 5th, or root 3rd, root 3rd, root 3rd. Or for example, root 5th would be B flat F, A flat, G, or if I do it here, you can also do root 3rd, root 3rd. Or you could go root 3rd, B flat to D, and then here's the next 3rd, A, then A flat, C, C sharp, A, like that. Did I go too far? I think it's B flat, yeah, B flat, A, C sharp, A flat, C, B, G, and then you're at the F sharp there. That's one thing you can do. You can also go use the 7ths. You can go B flat, A flat, A, G, A flat, G, F. You can do that kind of pattern there in your soloing too, but sometimes it's just really hard to think about that, so it makes a lot more sense to work out things ahead of time. If you're keeping the 2-5s, or if you're making those descending dominants there, if you're making those into a minor chord, B flat minor 7, E flat 7, A flat minor 7, D flat 7, which lots of folks do. If you're doing that, you can use like one of the tools we talked about in the walking bass tools that I've talked about before. Like you would play, if it's B flat minor 7 to E flat 7, B flat to A flat is flat 7. Now here's the natural third. of E flat to the root. And then we've got A flat minor 7, A flat. So that's a common thing that we can do, and you can find other kinds of sequences like that that will help you to navigate those chords. Let's take a listen now and see what George Duvivier does. I've got 3 courses from him, or is it two courses from him, I think. And so let's take a listen and see if you hear these things that we just talked about. So did you notice that he's playing all those roots? So often he's just playing 4 quarter notes of roots, and also that he's using these tritone substitution ideas, whether intentionally or not. What I feel like is perhaps your hand wants to go there when you're used to playing a lot of 2/5s. What I mean is, if you go in measure 5, A flat minor 7, D flat 7, if I'm playing, and then G flat is the next thing, I'm thinking, oh, that's a 2, and then the 5 would be B, F sharp 2. So lots of times you hear him going to the B there, which is interesting. And Reggie Workman, which I won't play for you here, but I'll share with you, does the same thing. So I think that's just sort of like the natural bass instinct to put that as, think of that as a 2/5, but in truth it goes G flat 7 to, is what's written, G flat 7 to F7. And then that leads to B flat, like that. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing is, I wanted to point out in the George Duvivier version, listen to all those E's he plays in bar 3, where we're saying there's just a lot of questions there, and it's written in the real book as B. He plays E a lot of times, and the fact that my friend confirmed there's some kind of E major sound there on piano from George Shearing, and that George Duvivier is playing that E more than once, it's not a mistake, makes me feel like that's right. It's not really a B minor 7 chord. It would be some kind of chord over B. So that's an important thing, I think, to note. So go slow, take your time, try to reduce where you can. Don't feel bad about using roots. Don't feel bad about using simple sequences to get you through the challenge of walking this tune over and over and over again. And before we leave talking about walking, I want to point out 2 things. One is, remember, the form is a funny form. The A sections are 12 measures long, the B section is 8. So if you're not on your game, you're going to have a little bit of tricky time navigating this chorus after chorus after chorus. So really pay attention to that. And the other important thing that I forgot to mention earlier is, remember that it is completely fine when we're talking about walking to eliminate, ignore the tensions that are written. So any flat 9s, any sharp 11s, anything with a 13, ignore that. If there's something that that amends The 3rd, 5th, or 7th, though, we have to respect that. So E flat minor 7, flat 5, we've got to play that flat 5, or we should. We should. I mean, this is all, I'm just trying to help, but if you play a natural 5 there, it's fine. But I just wanted to point that out to you. So let's talk now about how we might improvise in a more solo way on this tune. There's a ton of ways to approach this tune conceptually, and we'll go over a handful of them now. I want to bring your attention to the point, though, that anything you do in this tune, thinking about and learning and getting the perspective of these concepts is going to inform when you're trying to get inside tunes in the future to solo. So think about the broad headings that I'm talking about here and how you might apply them to other tunes, anything from a standard to another complicated tune. The first thing I want to talk about that it would perhaps be helpful for learning how to navigate this is to do a common thing, which is to find notes that are either the same between the chords or moving in a way that is very, very close to each other. So each note is very close to the one before and after, essentially what we often call voice leading. Did you catch what was happening there? What I'm trying to do is use the definitive color tones, not the color tones, the definitive notes that are in a chord that give it its distinctive sound. So for E flat minor 7 flat 5, we've got the flat 3, flat 5, flat 7. I'm starting on the flat 3. Next chord, I'm saying, is the note where I started, is that available in the next chord? And sure it is. That G flat is available in A flat as the flat 7. Is that G flat available on D flat major? Technically, yes, but it's not going to sound good. So I'm going to go down a half step to F, which is the 3rd. So I'm always trying to stick with 7ths and 3rds if I can. But you see that's gone away from right away, because on the E over B, the closest thing that's available to F would be the root, E. But, and then going to A, I could keep the E on A major 7. I could keep it, but in order to try to get where I wanted to go, I went to the 3rd of A sharp, A major, which is C sharp, and so on and so forth. So all these things I'm trying to get 3rds and 7ths. You can start from any place and get somewhere different when you start somewhere different, usually. Let's take a listen now to a different way of starting using voice leading. Obviously you're catching that I'm trying to put a little bit of one of the A sections using those voice leading notes as the target notes for a little bit of improvisation. This can be really helpful to get you started, to get you centered, to give you notes that you know work from note to note. And you'll notice here in these instances, I'm not eliminating chords. You can eliminate the chords like we did earlier and use those as voice leading. I'm not doing it here just because. One more way would be to try to find even more of what notes can stay, at least a little. I'm doing that a little bit here. For example, let me go back for a second. Example 2, I started on the flat 7 of E flat minor 7. On example 1, I started on the flat 3. You see the difference there. I should have noted that before. Here, we're starting on A natural, which is the flat 5, and notice that we can keep that for the flat 9. That's not a 3, 5, 7, right, of A flat, but it still works on that A flat 7. You can hold that there. And then the note A flat sticks around for 3 whole bars, right? You can make it work through all these chords that happen. And there's other places in this example where I didn't do that. For example, I just got tired of doing the same note over and over again. But try it for yourself. So check out this third version of voice leading. It's all the same. I feel like playing around with that voice leading idea will just really open up things for you from the fundamental level. And so I really recommend that. And that's why I started with that. The next page I have here for you is more of a data page. It's not meant to be played per se. You can try to play along with it if you want. But what I've done is I have given in what I made as sort of whole notes are the crucial parts of the chord, the fundamental part of the chord. So E flat minor 7 flat 5, I had to have G flat, D flat, and flat 5 in there, A natural, because we have to respect that being part of the chord. But on A flat 7, I've only got the 3 and the flat 7. But the smaller notes there, those are sort of appropriate available color tones from those chords that can sound good. Generally, I'm avoiding the 11 except when it's on a minor chord. But I'm putting the 9s and 13s and in certain instances even more. But the idea there is, so this is just data. This is not meant to be played, but you can pick and choose these notes as we've talked about. I've used Ron Carter's idea for my vertical vines thing, where we're sort of looking at what are all the available notes in a given moment. That is this, and it may also help you to navigate the difficulty of these changes. Another way that I tried to make sense of this, and I don't particularly find this really helpful for me, but maybe you will, so I'm including it in the PDFs too, is to sort of visually look at the note names that are part of this system that we're doing. And so it represents what are those important notes, and then in smaller boxes, what are the available color tones. So it's the same idea as this previous one. You can try to play along with this. I actually tried and had more difficulty than not, because most of the notes, it's not voice led. You know what I'm saying? So you're just sort of jumping up and down, right, if you try to play these notes exactly as they are. But I also made a point in certain instances, like in measure 2 with A flat 7, or in measure 3 with the B minor 7, or E over B, like you can think of some of those as just different triads. What available or pretty notes could make triads. This is kind of the idea of, well, we won't go there right now, but we've got G flat or F sharp diminished in certain instances, and so on and so forth. So that may be helpful. To that end, I want to use a little bit of that idea of thinking about triads in just a moment. Let's skip now, though. Let's not skip. Let's wait on that for a second and just talk about the normal way we're sort of taught about to approach this kind of stuff, which is like chord scales. And here I really want to greatly encourage you to not try to do that with this. I'm not saying you can't by any means, but it is exceedingly difficult, especially try to play what I have on the screen for you here as one option of chord scales. To try to fit these in time, it's nearly impossible. And to be able to play them, you have to slow the tempo down so much you lose sense of the tune altogether. It's almost unusable other than a data set. Again, like how else can I think about X, Y, and Z? So I've got one page of one kind of scale options that I'm trying to sort of stay pretty close to kind of what is easier, quote unquote. Like for example, if we look right before the B section, before the first and second ending, where the E6 to A major 7, I'm just saying play E major over all that. That's a pretty simple thing. But there is some things in here though that aren't quite intuitive. I did kind of allude to before that I think will really help you a lot. The first is, remember I mentioned the first chord, E flat minor 7 flat 5, could be thought of as an F sharp minor major. Think, for the chord scale here, think F sharp minor, a melodic minor. F sharp melodic minor, which is F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, whoops, E sharp or F, intonation, F sharp, The B doesn't really necessarily make a lot of sense there, the B natural, but that really captures the sound to me of this bar because we've got the G flat here with the F sharp, and the C sharp is D flat. So that you've got the flat 7 and the flat 5, and also you've got the A natural in there, which is the, I'm sorry, flat 7, flat 3. A natural is the flat 5, right? So for the next bar, the A flat 7, what I'm suggesting is now go to A melodic minor. We've started with F sharp melodic minor, now go to A melodic minor, because that gives it an altered sound. So the chord is A flat 7, what we're playing. There's the natural third, C, E. E is like a flat 5, sharp 5, and then F sharp is the G flat. And then there's G sharp from the A melodic minor scale, and that is also A flat, which is the root. So that's really fun to do there, and I find I really get a good sort of head start when I get there. I also like very much, I sort of talked about thinking of this next bar as, in a lot of ways, on beat 3 with this something over B or some kind of B minor 7 as the real book writes, think E major pentatonic. 1, E, F sharp, G, 5, 6, C sharp, B. That covers a lot of pretty notes in that. And then you can stay on E major for this next bar, and which I've said before, which I think allows some help there. Another thing I wanted to point out here is, again, this is a data set for you. All the flat 9 chords, all the dominant 7 flat 9, I've made them all into altered chords, which is not necessarily what you want to do. I mean, you might want to do that, but I'm not saying you should do that. So that's one thing. So again, it's just kind of like data. Just take a listen, try, etc., etc. I don't like some of the choices I put here, to be totally honest. Like on the G sharp minor 9, the G sharp Aeolian, which would be the key of B. I don't really love that. Actually, it doesn't really make sense to the sound in my ear at the moment. I think really because it's much more like maybe a G sharp Phrygian, like E major. Nonetheless, those are some choices that you could think about. More choices that I think get a little bit deeper into some of the sound is on this next page that I've got for you, where I start in the same place, F sharp melodic minor, and then melodic minor, then some D flat, or any modes of D flat, so Dorian, Phrygian, etc. Then the pentatonica, again, E major, A flat major. Then here at this moment, on the A flat minor 7, D flat 7, I'm saying play D flat mixolydian over the A flat minor 7. And now what I've done is I've chosen notes or scales or a starting note from a scale where the whole thing ascends. So on D flat 7 flat 9, I'm making that altered by playing D melodic minor. And then E Lydian would be the key of B, which the G flat 7, I'm thinking G flat 7, that's an F sharp 7 that would resolve to B. So I'm thinking B, but because I'm trying to keep this idea of an ascending start of the scales, D to E, I'm going up, so E Lydian. And then going up again, F sharp melodic minor now on the F7, making that altered. Same thing as the first scale we did. Continuing to ascend from there, I want to play A flat, sort of Lydian dominant on the B flat 7. What that would be A flat, B flat, C, D natural, E flat, F, G flat, A flat. Those cover the notes that are in there, including the flat 13. So you get the idea. Then we go to A altered for the sharp 5. Not everyone, I'm not exactly sure if that's a sharp 5 there, to be completely honest. Some people play that. I'm choosing to put altered in there because altered uses a sharp 5 rather than like whole tone, but you could do whole tone there as well. But A altered would be A, B flat, that's sharp flat 9, sharp 9, 3, flat 5, sharp 5, flat 7. And then for A flat 7, that is the key of D flat. That comes from the key of D flat. So in the, again, the idea of trying to go up in these chord scales, I'm choosing one of the other modes of D flat, B flat Aeolian. The key of the notes of the key of D flat, but starting from B flat. I won't go through every single one. You get the idea there. Another thing I wanted to point out is that I've tried this play on a little descending idea in the bridge. On the G sharp minor 7 to C sharp 7, I'm saying play C sharp mixolydian to start because we're just thinking C sharp dominant there. We're doing away with the G sharp. So start with C sharp mixolydian. And then because the next chord has a sharp 11 in it, I'm going to play that mixolydian but raise the 4. And now, if you see, now I'm going down to C. So I started a C sharp sort of idea, now a C idea, C mixolydian. I'm going with this sort of movement of the chord. And then respecting the sharp 11 there. And now going down again, respecting that beat. And then Lydian dominant. And then going down to A. So that really follows the movement of the chords there, and is set against that other idea I had where I was ascending. But after all that talking, I still want to say, I wouldn't try to grab it this way when you're playing. Not at all. It's too fast. There's too many chords. Use this as a data set. Use it to explore. But what you can do, I think, that also goes with some of the ideas that we alluded to before when I showed you some of the color tones and so on and so forth, is to think about an overarching approach to sort of where is the harmony and how can I approach that from a basic place. A common, not a common, one way I have thought about and have heard others say is to think about playing with D flat major, a D flat major color and a D flat minor color. That can be really applied throughout the whole tune mostly. And on this next page, you'll see here, I've chosen triads in the circled parts, but sometimes the sound of the moment is more than just the triad. Like sometimes it's actually fully a D flat major scale, for example, but I just put a triad there to indicate sort of the direction we want to go. It sounds boring when you just actually do this as a playing thing, but listen as I play here and notice where even in places that might not immediately seem logical, oh my gosh, we're just cycling around these qualities with D flat as the root. Check it out. So in truth, as you see, it's not all just D flat minor, D flat major if you want to encompass the whole entire tune and every sort of particular thing of every chord. Even some of what I have here doesn't exactly match a chord or two. But using that idea of just the basic triads, diminished, augmented, major, minor, you can get centered on a certain sound or also play around with color tones that you can find. You could as well, if you want to, there's an argument to be made, I think, that it's sort of like much bigger sections are really just sort of major and D flat minor, or C sharp minor is often how I think about it, rather than D flat minor is kind of hard to think about. So C sharp minor and D flat major, like bigger sections, like the first three, the first 2.5 bars would all be D flat major. The first, you could potentially say the first like next 3 measures would all be D flat minor, C sharp minor, keep going with C sharp minor, then D flat major. Like you can make it a bigger case, but I wanted to try to get a little bit closer to what the chord sounds are. To that end, you can play around with this same idea, and it's sort of derived from this D flat thing, is if we can make choices that use F and F sharp as the root and just think about triads from there. So what I've done is rather than write out the triads like I did before, those aren't intended, you aren't necessarily expected to play the written notation I have in the other one. It's just for reference. This one I just have these circles, like this is the triad we're thinking about in the moment. And you can see it starts off right where we were talking about F sharp minor to that very first sort of concept of how I'm doing it. But if we're thinking triads, this also goes with the sound and gives you different colors because it's accenting different color tones or chord tones of the chords as they go by. So let's listen to this. I'm going to be using F and F sharp as the root of these triads. Did that make some sense? I'm not telling you that you should play a whole solo like this, but rather it just gives you ways into the sound, and it's another option for perhaps making it easier for us to sort of understand what the heck is going on. As I go and say goodbye and play, thank you so much for checking these out. I really, really hope that it was helpful and that you get a little bit more inside this challenging tune. Always remember, straight ahead and strive for tone.